Jamaica Griffin.
My name is Alexis Garcia.
My name is Fabio Corral.
And I'm Jacob Chandler.
And so for our project, we will be looking at vehicles of advertisement for Life Church. So if you do not know, Life Church is based in Edmond, Oklahoma, and it is the largest church in the United States of America. So as of right now, they have 36 campuses plus an online church. So for our project, we will discuss advertisement spending of only the online church. So whether it be through online advertisement or social media advertisement, attempting to expand a business through a branch of advertisement can be costly. For example, Life Church spends on average about 3.4 cents on a Google ad. To advertise their business on social media, Life Church spends on average $1 per click. So for our presentation, we are attempting to identify which vehicle generates the most amount of clicks. For example, if spending money on AdWords and spending the same amount of money on social media advertisement, but they obtain more clicks from one of the databases, we want them to invest only in the database that is producing more clicks rather than dividing the amounts of money. So it is important to note that there is not a set amount of how much Life Church chooses to spend every month per click. It is pay per click. So, like I said, the question that we are addressing is, how does Google AdWords advertise spending relate to people watching the Life Church service? So now I'm going to pass it on to Alexis, and he will talk about the data that we used.
So the information gathered was from Life Church, obviously. We obtained this data from an individual at Life Church. She's an employee, and our relationship with this employee is Jacob's friend. So that's how we received that data. So when we talk about the statistical tools we used. So we used Microsoft Excel. So for any MBA students who are managerial statistics that do not know what Excel is, well, Excel is a spreadsheet developed by Microsoft that will make your life easier. That's all you need to know. No, I'm kidding, but we use Excel in our project mostly for the analysis tool pack that has statistical tools such as ANOVA. ANOVA, we pulled this data from our regressional analysis. The point of ANOVA is to determine whether there are any statistical significance difference between the means of the independent variables. We use regressional analysis and as well as trend analysis. Trend analysis in our model is used to give us an idea of what has happened in the past, so it can give us an idea of what will happen in the future. We also use scatter plots. Scatter plots is used to visualize the data points used. We used dummy variables as our methods. Dummy variables are used is Google advertisement spent on a specific month. July being our comparable variable that will be taken out of our regression. Our next method is hypothesis testing. Hypothesis testing is used to determine whether there is enough statistical evidence in favor of our certain belief or hypothesis about a parameter. And our last method we use is correlation. So I'm going to pass it on to Fabio. He will be discussing about our data and what results we had.
Thank you, Alexis. So here, you guys can see our first regression or attempt at developing a regression model. It was very simple. Our dependent variable was, the amount of clicks, and the explanatory variable was how much money was spent. So in essence, our hypothesis is that if you spend more money, you should get more clicks through the Google Ads pay-per-click service. And looking at this simple regression, we're surprised to see such a low R-squared. That basically means that if you're throwing a lot of money at Google Ads, it doesn't necessarily translate into more clicks. So That basically means that we're going to have to add more explanatory variables, as we'll discuss here in the next couple slides, what we added. But you see our R-squared is really low. It's about 1%. We had 37 observations, so we had a sizable sample. Again, our F-test here was pretty high. So our F-test actually failed in this case. And then looking at the p-value for Google Dollars, it was also very high, which means that this explanatory variable is not significant. So this first regression did not really do much, but it gave us some insight that we need to dig a little bit further. So one of the tools that Alexis mentioned was to help visualize what's going on here, and what we have here. Also we added a trend variable, and the data was presented by month. So 0, it started in September, and it goes on, counts the months. 11 here, you can see a peak. This is July, and every year July seems to be the peak. Upon investigation, I guess Life Church does this movie campaign series, Jake will talk about here in a little bit, that is really popular and is really driving a lot of the clicks there, more so than spending. And on the y-axis here, we have the amount of clicks, right? Another thing that's important when we're looking at trending the scatter plot, it's seasonal, and the season keeps decreasing each time. So that's of concern, right? That you're getting less and less clicks with each year that goes on. So this next slide here shows the money spent, and it's telling a different story. So again, here the x-axis we have the different months. Here, we have the money spent, and you can see over time, Life Church is spending more money on average per month, and an increase of $274 per month increase. And if you remember the previous slide, clicks are decreasing, but money is increasing. So that's not a very good thing if you're spending more money and getting less clicks. So that basically, led us to do the second regression model, which we have here, where we added a time trend. Basically, we just added another column numbered 1 through 37 for each of the 37 months. And you notice right away we got a huge improvement in our adjusted R-squared, went from 1% to 37%. So that right there shows there's some seasonality that we need to consider in our model. Our F-test actually now passes and is significant. And then we look at our explanatory variables. We have 2 in this case, the first being Google Dollars, where again, our p-value is kind of high. So this is not significant, right? It's not significant, but our trend here has a very low value and it is significant. And you notice the coefficient here, which is basically stating that every month that goes by, there's going to be a decrease in 21,917 clicks. And that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing that decline in clicks over time, something that is useful to know, right? It might not be, good news, but sometimes you need to know when things are losing your effectiveness, right? Whether that is through market saturation, where you have to pay a little bit more per click, what have you. We had to kind of dig a little bit deeper. So our third regression, we ended up looking at the seasonality. Specifically, we were interested in July because July is when we see the spike every month. And so we added another 11 explanatory variables. These are the dummy variables of each of the months, leaving out July. And you notice right here that this third regression really is the best regression that we were able to come up with, explaining for 56% of the variability within this regression model. Our F-test passes. And again, we have several significant explanatory variables. So again, our trend, low p-value, significant. Actually, we saw an increase in trend. So we went from 21,000 to 23,000 decline per month degradation. And then we look at each of the months, right here, February, low p-value, significant. We see that just by it being February, relative to July, you're going to have 450,000 less clicks, which is pretty remarkable. That it has nothing to do with money, but these campaigns that Life Church are doing have a lot of use, and so something that is useful to obtain. And the same thing here when you look at December, November, October. December again is only 300,000 less clicks, probably related to Christmas time, right? It's going to have a little bit more traffic, but still nothing compared to July. Again, this has nothing to do with the dollar spent, but more related to seasonality and these campaigns that Life Church is conducting. So I'm going to turn it over here to Jake, who's going to discuss a little bit about another one of the methods. So we had Google Ads, and we also looked at social media. So Jake, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Fabio. That was great. So we originally looked at Google AdWords and social media as two different forms of advertising. When we looked at the data for social media, as you can see here, the data was very all over the place for clicks and dollars spent. Whereas Google is more of a pay-per-click and more of a kind of a linear line, the social media was exactly the opposite. The adjusted R-square here obviously shows a negative 2.5%, which is just crazy to me how far that can be off. But the social media is different than Google AdWords too. Google AdWords is known to be the top advertising place, for online stuff. And then when we look at the scatter plot here, you can see that there is no correlation to number of clicks and dollars spent. As you see, the dollars spent here on the x-axis on the bottom, and then the y-axis is the clicks. You can see that there is no correlation at all with the dollar spent per click. So we decided to remove that from our analysis due to there just not being a good data there to really make anything out of. And we got such good data with Google AdWords that we chose to in on that and focus on that. So we decided for our solution, we can see that seasonality affects the dollars spent on Google AdWords. So again, they run a campaign in July every year called At the Movies, where they use movies to do like a little bit of a church service, and they offer popcorn and candy and such, and to kind of make it a movie experience, just to kind of draw people in. It's a really cool campaign. So we see that has an effect on the clicks. As Monica mentioned earlier, it's a pay-per-click. So the clicks determine the dollars spent rather than what we would normally think is that we go out and spend a certain dollar to get a certain amount of clicks. But it's kind of the opposite with Google AdWords being the pay-per-click. So we see that seasonality. And then first, kind of we think the best solution would be to cancel the social media advertising, as there's no direct correlation with the dollars spent and the clicks generated. And then we can add those dollars back to Google AdWords in the sense of creating more ads to generate more clicks. And then just maybe run more campaigns throughout the year. We see that At the Movies in July is a really good campaign, and it generates a lot of clicks, which generates more dollars spent on advertising. But we thought maybe if they could do a different campaign, maybe like quarterly, and do 4 different campaigns throughout the year, then that's going to generate more clicks than just that one campaign per year. And then for our conclusion, I just want to state that the campaigns were not directly related to the money spent, but they did have a huge impact on there. There's more that drives those clicks than just the campaigns, but those campaigns did have a huge impact on there, and therefore we do feel like more campaigns throughout the year are going to generate more clicks and more dollars spent, which is not the problem is not how much they're spending, but how can they get more clicks. So that's where we get to our conclusion of that. We look forward to any questions you have, and thank you for your time for watching this.